एंटिटी गाइड ऐप से मंगाया है मैंने, यहाँ से आप आराम से ऑर्डर कर सकते हैं कहीं से भी। अभी भेजो लिंक आप।
I made a lot of changes in my lifestyle after using Healthify Me.
Hello. Yeah, can you hear me? Hello. Yeah, can you hear me? I think it is working. Yeah, can you hear me? Yeah. Okay. Let us continue from where we had left the other day, where we had left 5-10 minutes back. Now I think we can hear you. So what we are saying here is that initially, as we are talking about the courses offered on Unacademy platform, these are the courses that are offered on Unacademy platform. Now and then, as you can see here, Mega Combat. In 60 minutes time, you have to answer 56 questions. This will be on 28th November at 11 a.m. and you can win rewards worth 6 crores also. And 1,000% lucky winners. You will get 100 lucky winners can get exciting rewards also. There will be 100% scholarship for there will be 100% scholarship for those right. There will be 100% scholarship for those who come out on top 3 ranks, and 75% scholarship for those who are coming between 4 and 10, and other types of scholarships also are there. Around between those are coming between 2001 and 3000 ranks will be given 15% scholarship. This is available in both Hindi and English. Then you have also these are the top rankers in Unacademy right now. For this year, you can see all the top rankers. Then right from second ranker to the other top rankers in this year's examination. And these are all the batches which they are starting from 24th November. You can take admission in all those batches. They are starting from 24th November. And you also have a complete test series to crack this UPSC examination, option test series as well as prelims and mains test series. It is worth 45,000 rupees, and it is also comes with free with 1 year and above iconic GS and COMBA subscription, which is also a very good thing. And you also have in this program called Standout from the crowd through experienced coach, iconic GS, and a free optional experienced coach also. You have that also is there. Then live mentoring program is also there, and you can also get loans from Unacademy with the minimal paperwork and everything else. So these are all what we call the programs started by Unacademy for the students who are preparing for this examination. So let us come back and look at what we are discussing today. What we have to discuss today. Today, as part of our discussion, we'll be looking at what we call today as part of our discussion. We'll be looking at Indian administration answer writing. As we know, this Indian administration paper 2 of public administration is very important because even this year also, if you look at it, most of students got top marks in paper 2 Indian administration, very good marks in Indian administration, and that is the reason why this answer writing becomes very important. So as usual, let us start with what are the basic ideas or the basic concepts that you have to remember while writing answers in Indian administration. First and foremost, what you have to remember here is that when you are writing answers in Indian administration, it is always better to get your answers supported by concepts from paper 1. This is what we call interlinkages between paper 1 and paper 2. This is what you have to do. Second thing is that in Indian administration, it's always better to take the support of what we call constitution and other facts. This is another thing that we have to remember. Whenever you are writing answers, as and where it is possible, it is always better to take the support of constitution and other facts which are relevant from the examination point of view. Then another thing that you have to remember here while writing answers in Indian administration is always focus on providing solutions. This is what you have to remember. You have to always focus on solution, providing solutions to the questions that have been asked. We must remember that most of the questions asked by UPSC are critical of the government, and we should not blindly get into the trap of criticizing the government. So what you have to remember here is that you have to give the reasons why that criticism was made, because when the question is asked, there must be some kind of truth in that criticism. So you must make sure that you are finding out the reasons why that criticism was made. And secondly, then you have to support that criticism with facts. This is very, very important. You have to support that criticism with facts. And finally, what you have to do here is you must provide solutions also. As we study, it is always better to write what we call prescriptive answers. It is always better to write prescriptive answers. That means those answers where you are providing solutions. That is very, very important. And if we can do these things, obviously you will be getting very good marks in this paper. And another important thing is that as and when it is possible, as I said, you can always link it to what we call the concepts from paper 1, thinkers from paper 1. So that you are telling the examiner that not only you have the necessary factual support to write a better answer, but you also have that kind of analytical ability to come out with more efficient answers. This is where the success can always be seen in Indian administration. Now we will try to understand these things by answering some of the questions that were asked in the previous years. And as you can see, UPSC has a tendency to repeat the questions that they have asked in the past years, whether it is paper 1 or paper 2. So let me take some of the important questions that were asked in the previous years and let us try to understand how to go about writing these answers. So take this question which is there on your screen. Take the question which is there on your screen. Democracy within bureaucracy is likely to reduce its effectiveness. Democracy within bureaucracy is likely to reduce its effectiveness. Do you agree with this view? Argue your case. So what we have to remember first and foremost is understanding the question. This is where you have to be spending a little bit more time here. Understanding the question is very, very important, right? So what we have to do here is read the question carefully, because as I always say, 99% of the time the answer is always there in the question itself. The only thing that we have to do here is take a little bit of time and try to understand the question. When the question says democracy within bureaucracy is likely to reduce its effectiveness, do you agree with this view? What is the meaning of the statement? Democracy within bureaucracy. What do you mean by democracy within bureaucracy? It means that if there is a more decentralization of power, if there is more empowerment of people at the bottom, if there is more autonomy given to the people at the lower levels, it can reduce the effectiveness of bureaucracy. That is what the question says. If you are giving more autonomy, if you are ensuring more decentralization, if you are ensuring a little bit more transparency within the functioning of bureaucracy, it is likely to reduce the effectiveness of bureaucracy. Do you agree with this view? That is what the question says. Do we agree with this view? That means any decentralization, any autonomy, any transparency can be problematic. That is what the question says. So do we agree with the question? Right? That is what first we have to ask ourselves. Do we agree with the question? Automatically we don't agree with this kind of question. Why? Because this is what we say. The Weberian bureaucracy, with its emphasis on centralization of power at the top, with its emphasis on rules and regulations, with its emphasis on secrecy, with its emphasis on written communication and value neutrality, has failed as an instrument to bring about the much needed socio-economic transformation. As we studied, you have to link these things to public policy analysis automatically. In paper 1, we study public policy analysis. In public policy analysis, we study about various models of policy implementation. One of those important models of policy implementation we study are a participative model. Right? First one is authoritative, second one is participative. Authoritative model focuses on centralization of power in the hands of the people at the top and micromanagement of people at the bottom, and not giving any kind of freedom to the people at the bottom, and threatening them with punishment if they don't achieve the objectives. Obviously, that model was a failure all over the world, and that is the reason why we talk about what is called participative model, wherein people at the lower levels in the organizations are given more freedom. People at lower levels in the organization are motivated through rewards and incentives. People at lower levels in the organization are given more autonomy to take decisions and implement decisions. So that is what the question basically talks about. As I said, it is all about interlinkages. Either you should be able to link, there's a paper 1 and Indian administration. If you have any doubts, you can always immediately ask me. I can, I can see these things in front of me. So if you have any doubts, you can ask me. I will try to answer all your doubts also. Right? So obviously we don't agree with the question, because all around the world, the basic trend that we witness here is that, yeah, yes, Manas, you can link it to Max Weber, and then you should be linking it to public policy analysis, policy implementation. These two things that you have to interlink. So that is the reason why, if you look at it, the objective of these governance reforms, especially administrative reforms, the objective of these administrative reforms is basically to either decentralize power, to give more autonomy to the people at lower levels, especially within the bureaucracy, and also fix accountability. That is what we study as part of new public management also, autonomy and accountability. Why? Because this centralized top-down approach, one-size-fits-all approach has been a complete failure all over the world. Especially you have to bring in India, in a country like India, which has so much of diversity, which has so much of uniqueness in terms of regions and localities and languages. So it is not possible to have this kind of centralized top-down administrative systems. And what is required is democracy within bureaucracy with accountability mechanisms. Give them autonomy and fix accountability on their part. Change their attitudes from rule orientation to outcome orientation, and make sure that this bureaucracy also changes their attitudes and ensure active participation of citizens. And how this can be done? As we said, with the help of what is called administrative reforms. Right? This is what you have to write for this question. This is what you have to write for this question. Right? Then let us move on to the next question. If you have any doubt, you can ask. Otherwise, I'll move on to the next question. Right? I will move on to the next question. Okay. Okay, then let me move on to the next question. District collector's role. District collector's role in the development process has been overemphasized. This is the question. district collector's role in development process has been overemphasized. Comment on the statement. Again, as I said, it is about understanding the question. First of all, do we agree with the statement and why the statement was made, and what can be the solution? That is what the structure of our answer. So how do we start our answer? How do we start our answer? That is what we say. At the local level, after independence, it was only bureaucratic administration that was continued for the first 40 years. At the central and state levels, we had democratic administration with the political executive taking decisions and controlling the functioning of bureaucracy. But at the local level, it was only bureaucratic administration, with the district collectors have been given many responsibilities, including performing what we call regulatory as well as developmental functions. Then come to the next part. After 1991, after 1992, India had opted for a political decentralization of power with the passage of 73rd and 74th amendments. With the passage of 73rd and 74th amendments. And it was expected that there would be radical change in the role of district collector in the development administration. And what is that radical change that we always speak about? The radical change that we speak about here is the change in the role of the district collector from that of a line agency to that of a staff organization. That is what we say. Change the role of district collector from line agency to that of a staff organization. This is the radical change that we talk about. Next, but this has not taken place at the ground level, because of which district collector continues to play a very prominent role in the development process at the local level. So, we don't completely agree with the statement, because district collector continues to play a very important role because of our inability to ensure effective functioning of these local self-governments. Yes, his role in the development process has been overemphasized because of the fact that the state governments are not willing to transfer real powers to the local bodies in terms of functions, functionaries and finances. On top of it, what do we say? After 2005 NDMA, National Disaster Management Act, was passed on the floor of the House, district collector was also given the responsibility of what we call disaster management functions. So, even almost after 30 years of the local self-governments, experiments with local self-governments, it is the district collector who continues to play a very, very important role. Whether it is regulatory functions, whether it is developmental functions, whether it is disaster management functions, whether it is coordinating functions, whether it is in a conduct of election functions, he is still performing the most important role. And central and state governments still rely heavily on district collector to get their developmental and welfare schemes implemented. And central and state governments still rely on district collector to provide information regarding the implementation of the developmental welfare schemes, that we call what we call feedback regarding the implementation. Instead of having more faith in the NGOs, non-governmental organizations, who can provide a better view, better perspective, better review of these developmental welfare schemes, the central and state governments depend more on they depend more on what we call the district collector to provide the feedback. More often than not, this feedback is neither impartial nor unbiased. And after writing all these things, you have to come with the solutions. You have to come with the solutions. What is the solution that we have to talk about here? The solution that we have to talk about here is that the willingness on the part of the central and state governments to yeah, exactly, Manas, you can write, willingness on the part of central and state governments to transfer real powers to the local bodies, especially the state governments to transfer real powers to local bodies. And also, there must be proactive steps on the part of the state governments to involve these NGOs, as Manas has pointed out here. During this corona pandemic, these NGOs played a very, very important role, so that over a period of time, district collector would become only a staff agency responsible for providing suggestions to the people elected bodies. That is what you have to write for this question, right? This is what you have to write for this question. Next question. Let us move on to the next question. If you have any doubts, you can ask. Otherwise, I'll move on to the next question. Let us move on to the next question then. Why has the district planning been marginalized in many states and remained prominent in a few states? Explain. Why has district planning has been marginalized in many states and remained prominent only in a few states? That is what we say, DPCs. The 14 states are yet to constitute DPC. And in those states where they have constituted DPCs, they are there only for the namesake, but not given any kind of importance by the state governments. Why? The question is that why in some states like Bengal and some states like Kerala, there still this district planning is given more importance, but in most of the states it has remained marginalized. What is the reason why? Why district planning has remained on the margins for a very long period of time? As I said, 1992, 73rd, 74th amendments were passed, and after that, it was believed that India would move towards what we call decentralized planning and bottom-up planning. But this has not happened. Why? There are so many reasons. First and foremost, this tendency of the central government to come out with a more number of what we call developmental and welfare schemes, what we call them as centrally sponsored schemes. What we are witnessing nowadays is the central government coming out with almost one scheme a day, wherein it is expected that the central government would simply make a lot of political mileage of these schemes, because elections in India are held separately to state assemblies as well as the parliament. So when elections are held to parliament, that is at the national level, the political party must also come out with the programs that it has implemented for the people. That's the reason why you can see that there are many, maximum number of what we call centrally sponsored schemes, proliferation of these centrally sponsored schemes. And obviously, when there is so much of centrally sponsored schemes, automatically district planning would remain marginalized. It means that you are not giving any kind of opportunity to these district planning committees to these district planning committees to have any kind of role in terms of formulating the plans. Why? Because even after implementing 73rd, 74th amendment, still that centralized top-down approach to development is being continued without any kind of relief to the state and local civil governments. The one-size-fits-all approach is what that is coming in the way of decentralization of power to the local level. The best example here is we have not given any freedom to the district collectors, and we have not given any freedom to the state governments. We have not given any freedom to the district collector or state governments regarding this what we call COVID management. Also, it was done completely with the central government taking full responsibility and having full powers. That is where the problem is. Next reason why the district planning has remained marginalized. Next important reason why this district planning has remained marginalized is because of the fact that the state governments simply are not willing to transfer power to the local bodies. This is what we say. The three problems that we talk about here: the functions, the functionaries, and the finances. The functions, the functionaries, and the finances. Unwillingness on the part of the state government to transfer powers and financial powers, the activities, and the functionaries, because of which this district planning only remained on paper. As we know, 80% of the members of DPC are from the elected members of local bodies of both rural and urban areas. Remaining 20% are nominated. But the basic issue here is that where are local bodies? The basic here is that we don't have any local bodies. Why? Because the state governments are not willing to conduct elections to local bodies. They come out with so many reasons for not conducting local elections to these local bodies. They come out with so many reasons. The reasons can vary from school holidays and school examinations. These are the reasons given by the state governments for not conducting elections to local bodies. They say that school examinations, that is the reason they don't have time to conduct local bodies elections. And they give the reason like floods and other disasters. That is the reason they are not conducting elections. They give the reason that they are not conducting local body elections because they wanted to give more reservations to OBCs. The matter is in the court. And that is the reason they don't conduct local body elections. Next reason given by them for not conducting elections to local bodies, mostly this is political because they don't want the opposition parties to gain any kind of strength. Because, for example, this year local body elections to be held, and if the state governments lose those local body elections, it will have impact on what we call next year assembly elections or parliamentary elections. That is where another problem is. And another problem here, why district planning has remained marginalized, is because of the fact that finances. Unlike the recommendations of the Central Finance Commission, the recommendations of state finance commissions are only advisory in nature. They're not mandatory. So you don't know what is the amount of money you are getting. So where is the question of formulating the plans? District planning can be there only when what is the amount of money that you are going to get from the state governments or from the state governments through state planning commission, and also the amount of money that you are getting from the central planning commission directly. But unfortunately here what is happening is that these state governments simply don't know, these local governments simply don't know what is the amount of money that they are getting, what is the amount of money they are getting from the state finance commission, because the recommendations are never what we call these recommendations are never implemented. These recommendations are never implemented on time. This is another reason why district planning has remained marginalized. Next important reason why this district planning has remained marginalized, because these members of the local bodies who are part of this DPCs simply do not have the technical knowledge and experience to formulate the plans. They don't have the technical knowledge and experience to formulate these plans. They simply don't have the technical knowledge. So what do? They depend on the bureaucracy, and the district collector never shows any kind of interest in providing, the state government never shows any kind of interest in providing this kind of technical knowledge personal to this district planning committees. For all these reasons, it remained marginalized in most of the states. At the end of the day, what we say is a lack of political commitment, both on the part of the central government as well as state governments. And the solution is simple. You have to increase awareness among the people about the benefits of what we call decentralized planning and participatory implementation. We have to move towards a political culture based on cognitions. Right? This is what you have to write for this question. If you have any doubts, you can ask. Otherwise, I can move on to the next question. Right? Shall I move on to the next question? Okay. Let us move on to the next question. Ordinance making power of the executive needs to be suitably restrained. Examine it critically. Ordinance making power of the executive needs to be suitably restrained. That is what we say. As usual, you start with the why aspect of the question. Why do we need ordinances? Why? Because in our parliamentary democracy, the president is also part of the parliament, and our parliament does not meet all through the year, whereas governance is a continuous activity. governance is a continuous activity. That is the reason why our constitutional makers have provided this facility wherein during the absence of parliament, during the absence of the functioning of legislature, the president has been given the power to make ordinances to ensure continuity to governance. What is happening here is that if you look at it, in the last 7 years of the present BJP rule also, they have issued maximum number of ordinances compared to the previous times also. And the fact here is that in the last 2 years, the government has a majority on the floor of the house in both Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha. In spite of the fact that they have majority on the floor of the house, they kept on issuing ordinances. And this country, our country, has witnessed what we call Ordinance Raj from 1970s onwards. This we have witnessed as part of what we call the presidential form of government. The basic issue here is that the government does not want any kind of discussion and debate on the key issues related to ordinances. Since ordinances are issued by the executive, there is no scope for any discussion and debate. And what happens, more often than not, the ruling political party at the center does not have any majority in, they don't have any majority in Rajya Sabha. That is the reason why what do? They make use of the loopholes in our procedures, and they would allow the ordinance to lapse after a period of 6 months by deliberately not introducing on the floor of the house, and then they will make sure that the ordinance is reissued by the president. With this period also, as we have mentioned, witnessed what we call politicization of the office of the president. The president would keep on giving his approval for those ordinances in spite of the fact that it is completely anti-democratic in nature. That is why this question was asked. Ordinance making power of the executive needs to be suitably restrained. So what should be done? The Supreme Court has come out with so many judgments, but they are not implemented. Supreme Court has said that the government should resort to issuing ordinances only under exceptional circumstances, but that was not implemented by the executive. So what is the solution? The solution is very simple. Let the government issue ordinances. The only thing here is, once the parliament meets, there should not be any kind of flexibility with the government for tabling ordinances on the floor of the house. It is right now it is the discretion of the speaker whether to allow the ordinance to be tabled on the floor of the house or not. So the solution is that whenever the house meets, it should take up these ordinances first before commencing the regular business of the house, and it should be discussed and debated, and it should be voted on the floor of the house before, as I said, executive takes before the legislature takes up any other business of the house. This is one solution, and the solution is that the president can also be proactive. The president can be proactive, and the president can restrain the government from issuing ordinances, especially if those ordinances are related to what we call important aspects related to governance. For example, recently our central government has issued an ordinance raising the tenure of the directors of CBI and ED to 5 years. They are very complex issues in a sensitive part of governance. Let the government do these things more through the parliament rather than doing it through backdoor, through ordinances. That is what we are saying. Next, let us move on to the next question. Minimum government and maximum governance is not just a slogan, but a philosophy of administration with enormous potentialities. Do you agree? Give your reasons. This is what our Prime Minister would always say: minimum government and maximum governance. It is not a slogan, but a philosophy of administration with enormous potentialities. Why? As usual, you have to start your answer with the why aspect of the question. In fact, the objective of doing all these questions, whether it is through YouTube or whether it is through special classes or through the crash course, which we have completed, or through the test series, is to make you familiar with writing answers. Most of the things you already know, But the objective is to make sure that you develop this art of writing answers. That's very, very important, right? As usual, we will start with the why aspect of the question here. What is the why aspect of the question here? Why? It is a philosophy of administration with enormous potentialities. What is the reason why? So let us start with the basic thing here. So what we say here is that after independence, India has opted for a welfare state wherein the state has taken up a maximum number of functions. In fact, all functions were performed by the state in the name of a positive state and a welfare state. What are the functions? Regulatory functions, developmental functions, welfare functions, disaster management functions, and running of public sector enterprises. All these functions were taken up by the state only. Because one, the private sector was not fully developed. Two, the NGOs and civil society organizations were still in nascent stage. And three, people looked up to the state to provide solutions to all their problems. Now, what was the outcome there? When the state had taken up all those functions, it never realized the fact that it did not have the kind of, it did not have the kind of, abilities that are needed to perform all those functions. And it was the Weberian bureaucracy that was given the responsibility of performing all those functions. They are trained only to perform what we call regulatory functions. They simply were a failure in terms of running the public sector enterprise. They were a failure in terms of disaster management. They were a failure in terms of implementation of developmental welfare schemes. They were a failure in terms of bringing about that socio-economic transformation. Ultimately, it was a complete failure. That is when the government had realized that what really matters is not the quantity of governance. What really matters is not the size of the government. What really matters is the quality of governance. What really matters is the quality of administration. Obviously, when it is performing hundreds of functions, when the administration is performing hundreds of functions, obviously, it was a complete failure for the simple reason that it neither had the ability, nor the commitment, nor the skills, nor the knowledge to perform all those functions. For example, running a public sector enterprise requires different kind of mindset, different kind of abilities, different kind of values, and different kind of skills. The Weberian bureaucracy simply was not trained to perform all those functions. And that is the reason why since the 1990s, as part of liberalization, globalization, privatization, we have witnessed what we call as since 1990s we have witnessed what we call as a multi-actor paradigm in the development administration, with the private sector, with the multinational companies, with the right with NGOs, civil society organizations, self-help groups, and then media, and pressure groups, voluntary associations becoming part of governance. So we are not in a situation wherein we have to look towards the state in a desperate manner to provide solutions to our problems. There are so many other institutions that had come up to become part of governance. Earlier, governance was equated only with the government. Now, governance can be performed by multiple agencies, wherein government is only one of those agencies. That is the reason why now the slogan is minimum government and maximum governance. What do we mean by this minimum government and maximum governance? It means that the size of the government, the quantity of state intervention, this is what we study. The size of the government and the quantity of state intervention should be as less as possible, but it should have huge amount of impact on the lives of the people. How? By ensuring efficient governance. Let the government perform only simple functions. Let the government perform only very less number of functions. What really matters is not the size of the state. What really matters is the quality of governance. Let the government perform those functions which it has to perform. For example, judicial administration, it cannot be privatized. And this judicial administration it plays a very important role in ensuring better governance. As this year's economic survey also pointed out, as this year's economic survey also pointed out, one of the important reasons of why we are not able to what we call we are not able to maximize our potential as far as attracting FDA is concerned, or maximizing our economic growth is concerned, is because of this judicial governance. Yes, exactly, Manas. Yes. So that is the reason why we need effective governance. Let our judiciary make sure that all the cases that are pending in the courts are solved within a time frame. Similarly, let the central and state government restrict themselves to performing most important functions like law and order, maintenance of law and order, because that is what is necessary for achieving what we call this rapid economic growth and development. As we study all the time, capitalism requires strict implementation of rule of law. Let a bureaucracy perform only those functions where it has the abilities and capabilities, right? And let the bureaucracy does not enter into all those areas which it simply does not have any kind of ability. Unfortunately, on the other hand, what we had earlier was that maximum government and no governance. We had maximum government and no governance. And we should move away from that system to minimum government and maximum governance. Let the government make sure that these regulatory authorities function really well, so that they have control over the functioning of, they have effective control over the functioning of markets, so that we can prevent monopolies in the functioning of markets. And this is what we say maximum governance. Similarly, if you look at it, let the government make sure that the NGOs and civil society organizations are given as much role to play, to ensure what we call citizen empowerment, with the government restricting itself to performing what we call core activities. That is where it can talk about enormous potentialities. Why? Because at the end of the day, what is required is empowerment of citizens. This empowerment of citizens is possible only when you give them maximum freedom to do whatever they want. On the other hand, this maximum government, what it does is that it will restrict all the freedoms and independence of citizens, rights of citizens. This is not what is required. That is the reason why one of the important slogans that we talk about here is government has no business to be in business. The government has no business to be in business. If the government is spending its time in business, it means that it is not focusing on other aspects of governance. The government should focus on inclusive growth. It should focus on sustainable development. It should focus on redistribution of income and wealth in favor of the poor people. It should focus on disaster management, because it is not what the markets will look at. It should focus on rural infrastructure. It should focus on the empowerment of social and economically backward sections of society. When the government has to perform all those functions which are not taken care of by the markets or NGOs, why should the government also enter into the functions to be performed by NGOs and markets? In the process, what is happening is the government is spreading its resources very thinly in different directions. At the end of the day, as I said, it will be a case of maximum government and no governance. What is required here on the part of the government here is the government must have faith in the civil society organizations and NGOs. Yes, there are so many these organizations which are working against the interests of the state, but there are maximum more number of them who are working for the people also, as we can see during the corona crisis, migrant crisis. They performed a commendable job, wherein the central and the state governments have simply disappeared when it comes to rescuing those migrants. This is where we talk about what we call the significance of minimum government and maximum governance. It has enormous potentials in terms of improving the efficiency of administration, in terms of ensuring focus of administration, in terms of making the administration accountable to the core functions it performs, in terms of ultimately ensuring the empowerment of the citizens also. That is the reason why we say that it is not just a slogan, it is a philosophy of administration, which has enormous potential. Which has enormous potential. I think the time is up, right? I think maybe we can stop it here for today. And tomorrow also we have, I think, evening at 5 o'clock. From tomorrow onwards, every day evening 5 o'clock, we have this YouTube class. And the link for the class will be, put up in our Telegram groups. And it will be Sunidhi, I will try to again reschedule it. I will try to reschedule it again. Right? I try to reschedule it again. Right? Anyway, I think I will be doing one more essay class also on our YouTube classes. So you can, in this week itself, we will be doing essay class, I am sure. It is there. Right. So that is it. We will meet tomorrow evening at 5 p.m. With our YouTube class. Right? Till then, take care of yourself.